Hey guys, Shin here from channel Maddnes. I'm coming at you again with another Horus Heresy audiobook review. This time, I'm going over the Heralds of the Siege. Yes, I know, this is way out of order than what I was chronologically going, but I like to read the books as they come out, so I thought it would be best to give you my raw review as soon as possible. So you just bear with me and we'll get back to the chronological order that we'll be following as the date. Yes, so Heralds of the Siege is the 52nd book in the Horus Heresy series. It's going to be a little bit different than before. I'm going to record each of the mini books or the short stories separately, and then throw them together into this compilation, so I don't have to sort of wing it all in one go. So I can give you a better explanation of each story separately. Yeah. So the Heralds of the Siege. It was preceded by Slaves of Darkness, which I've already done a review on, and it's followed by Titan Death, which I have not read yet, so hopefully that can come out in an audiobook and I can get around to reading it. So I'll see you at the end of the video. Hey guys, so the first book in the Heralds of the Siege is Myriad, which is a follow-up to Cybernetica, the book that the one where we follow Carrion, the Knight Errant, his planet to sort of save Mars instead of trying to exterminate it like Dawn wants to. And in that one we come across this this machine called the Tubular Myriad, which is basically sort of like a self-replicating AI device that takes over other machines and whatnot. And his idea was to release it, let it save Mars, because that's what its ultimate goal was, and then eventually it would kill itself out, because that's what apparently all AI do eventually. Obviously, if you read that one, you know things don't go as planned, and basically all the material, all its copies, or all the Tubular Myriads were killed, apart from one that was left inside a Thalaxis machine, or the big, or whatever the big ones are called. I'll remember them later. But yeah, so this carries off from there. This one's called Myriad, and it basically carries off from there. Starts off with basically a demon forged temple as it's you know, is tending to its warlord titans, or its titan manufactories, and becomes under attack from some loyalists from Mars, which is really nice to see. It's nice to see that the war on Mars isn't as one. Well, it's still slightly one-sided, but you know, there's still a good, decent fight going on. And these bands of rebels are going around, and they're able to take out, you know, warlord titans. Not take them out as you would think, but you know, they can get into their nooks and crannies and take out important parts like the MIU units inside the head, and that basically stops them from functioning, because that's probably the most important part of it. So yeah, they're going along doing their job and whatnot, and as a small band is making their way back, they come across obviously a downed Collection. Is it a Collection? I think it's a Collection unit. They come across a down collection unit, some scouts, sort of scavengers that go around and collect usable material for the rebels, and basically a new recruit. And they decide to collect it back up and take it back to their safety base. Noticing that there's like a little bit of confusion amongst, because they came across some fabricated General Cabal, whatever his name is, his his Skitarii, but they seemingly turned on each other and nobody really knows why. So yeah, so they're a little bit confused, but they're like, oh yeah, well we'll just take this thing back to, we'll just take the scouts and the collection back to Castine. I can't pronounce it. My apologies. I can't pronounce it. I'm not the best at languages. Yeah, so they take the thing back to the rebel base, and because they need to go into not detox, the prison, but the quarantine. That's the word. They put them into quarantine so that they know that they're clear from scrap code and whatnot and everything like that. And as I said in there, obviously the guy that they picked up, the new recruit, he's freaking out because of this robot. And it's kind of weird, but then the robot wakes up, and sort of the guy in charge of the rebellion sort of recognizes that that's the Tubular Myriad, and he's a little bit skeptical. Well, he's obviously like standard priest, they're like, it's heretic, but obviously things are a little bit different now, that the fact that Mars has pretty much been taken over And basically the robot kills the new recruit because he's harboring some sort of GPS device inside him, a demon sort of device for obviously the demon Dark Mechanicum to try and track down the rebellious base, but it doesn't work. He convinces and then he sort of, I don't know, hacks the rebellious, the rebellion's system, and starts taking it over. And at first the general, the priest who's in charge is like, thinks about it and is like, well, let's let him do it because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and this thing is, we're not a threat to this thing. This thing is out to like obviously save Mars and it needs us, so it makes sense, and it does work. It's because it's for some reason the tip of the MYRIAD has the ability to cancel out the scrap code and clear anything that's been affected by it, and it does so to like a few warlord titans, which means some surviving princeps they have and go were able to take them back over, and they were able to bring the fight back to Calbo Hell, which is, it's nice to see. Although I was a little bit confused because I understand like the scrap code was, I didn't realize it was this mind controlling device. I figured it was more like this super amped up drug that once it got in it just messed with your system and started converting you, and there was like, after that there was no real way back. But apparently the tip of the MYRIAD can just clear the code from your system, and then you can make sense of your own things, which seemed to be happening because that's why the Skitarii were turning on each other, because no longer bound by the scrap code and following the orders, they can make their own decisions, and they obviously choose for all this. So it's nice to see that Mars is now back on its way to the fighting sign, which is good. And I did enjoy the tip of the MYRIAD from the original book. I think it's a nice little device. I hope things go well for it. Obviously it shouldn't be go well because not sure what happens to it in the future. But this little story, I enjoyed it wholeheartedly. I think it was really nice to see Mars again, and Mars isn't just there's still a fighting force on Mars. So good thumbs up for me, and we'll move on to the next one. So the second story in the audiobook collection is The Grey Raven, and I'll do my best to try and explain and give you my opinion on it as best as I can, but the lexicon doesn't actually have that much information on the characters' names apart from the main character. So I'll do what I can to sort of explain what happens. So we come back and we follow the return to Terra with the librarian Balsar Cortherin. The name may not mean anything to you because it didn't really mean anything to me. Basically, this is the group of that was with Corax when he opened up the vault and went to go do his things in his story. This is the guy who was the psyker that allowed Corax the door to open because it was sealed by obviously like a psychic I don't know thing, and the custodians were against it because obviously the Edict of Nicaea was in effect, and no psychers were allowed to use any abilities, even though the Emperor sent Corax here to go get it, and it was sealed by a psychic door, and it just seemed obviously like, well, how are we supposed to get in? But custodians are stubborn, so yeah. But he was the one who was the will of the Emperor, and the door opened and whatnot. This is him, and we were hit with him. He's returning to Terra to face judgment from the Sigillite for breaking the Edict of Nicaea, because it turns out it was his pay. He did willingly open it, knowing what he was doing, and he had to face his judgment, which is fine. So he's coming back with the cohort of Imperial Fists that were sent with that came with them. I don't think they came with them. They turned up with armor after Corax had returned back to his planet to start messing with the genes. These are the Imperial Fists that came back, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we understand. We bought you some nice armor. Can we hang out with you?" And the Raven Guard were like, "Sure." It's kind of nice. It was a nice little touchy-feely story, which I enjoyed. So it's basically him, the Imperial Fist, and I think the Custodies. The Custodies that went with Corax no longer have a reason to be with Corax, so they're returning Terra to continue with their duties. So they're all coming back, and they're waiting basically in line to deal with obviously trying to get through foot traffic in space, because obviously the blockade is well and truly up and whatnot. But as they come under hails from some of the Custodies who challenge their prospects, and basically they give the order to the captain custodians on the ship, who basically just takes a swing to try and kill off our Liberia, our Raven Guard. With no one understands why this is happening or expected it. So the Raven Guard bolts throughout the ship to try and save himself. The Imperial Fist, obviously friends with him, get in the way to try and calm down the custodians. Like, obviously think this is a misunderstanding and they can, explain why and whatnot. But what entails for most of the book is basically this cat and mouse story as this Raven Guard is running around the ship and whatnot, trying to survive or explain himself, and the custodians are cutting his corners off and basically stopping him. The custodians and the Imperial Fist are taking shots at each other, but no one really wants to spill each other's blood because the Imperial Fist don't want to kill the custodians, and the custodians are only after the Raven Guard. So it's like this sort of weird game that's going on. And eventually it gets to the pinnacle where I think the captain of the Imperial Guard, Imperial Fists. If I've been saying Imperial Guard this time, I'm sorry. It's the Imperial Fist. The captain of the Imperial Fist and a Raven Guard, they're together, but they're confronted by the captain of the Custodes in one last effort. Unfortunately, the captain of the Imperial Fist is taken out by the Custodes and is about to deal the swinging blow to our Raven Guard. The Raven Guard finally seeing like he's got no option left, is about to obviously whip out his mind magic. He's been holding it back this whole time because he only broke the Edict of Nike once, and he followed his oath and that he wouldn't do it again until he faced his judgment. But he wanted to at least explain himself. So he's finally about to whip out his magical power to obviously stop Captain of the Custodes, only to be stopped by his own sort of oath at the last minute, saying, "Fine, I'll accept whatever fate," without ever giving reason. And just as he's about to take his death blow, the Custodes misses the lob, and it's like, all right, you passed the test, and that was like that's it. Apparently there was a test from Malcador to see whether or not he's good enough to become a knight errant. And it's just unfortunate and sad that obviously it's like the Imperial Fist got in the way and died, and thought, well, that's shit and stupid, but I guess that's sort of what Malcador and Custodes are like and whatnot. You could have done a better test and just have it like I theorized, like, well, what if he didn't dodge the first blow that happened on like the comm station and he just took it, like, because it came across like the first blow was meant to be a killing blow, but they all assumed that he would have known or by psychic power or something. But like, if he didn't and he didn't move and he just took your blow, like, well, then you killed him. How? I was like, well, he passed the test, but he died, so, well, that's nice. Yeah, it's this odd story. Doesn't really add much weight other than to the fact that I guess it's just another knight errant for Malcador to play with. So yeah, and we'll move on to the next one. So the third book is Valerius, which is accounts of Marcus Valerius from the Thyrene cohort, who was that guy who convinced the brother captain to go and save Corax after obviously Istvan V massacre, and who's been started off seeing visions from the God Emperor and whatnot. He's also in charge of like 20,000 Imperial Guard or things. So if you watch reading and listening to the other Corax books, then you'll know who he is. He comes back. So he's trying to lead the Thyrene cohort back into victory. He's been told by Corax he's been sent by Corax to be the government to help hold off the obviously the inevitable conflict from Horus himself. And basically what happens is I think they're just holding off some sort of river or plateau area when they come under attack from basically the lunar wolves and a few titans. It's a no-win situation, but he uses his faith to get through it, which is and to help get all his imperial soldiers through it as well. That's basically what it is. What happens? They take out the titans, but they're obviously curb stomped by the lunar wolves, and in a last ditch effort, these sacrifices. I think his bastion by blowing it up, which is, I guess, fair enough. Which was like a sad end to Marcus, because I feel like it would be more important, make more of a stand considering of what he's been doing through. But oddly enough, he doesn't end up dying. I think he's a sole survivor out of the entire 20,000 guardsmen. I think another platoon comes across the grounds to find out what's happened, and they're like, oh, okay, we were saved by these guys. They laid down their lives to buy us, like 20 minutes, which helped out a lot. Too bad there's nobody to thank. And then obviously, like, this guy falls out of the ruins of the bastion. I can't tell if it's Marcus though or his follower Pt1. I think his name is Pt1, because it doesn't really go. It's someone clutching the book, but I can't remember if Pt1 was clutching, also holding the book. But yeah, really short story, sort of sad ending to what we know of the Thyrene cohorts, because it's like it was already the last effort to muster as many people as possible after they, like, the first sort of cohort went with Corax to Isfahan. No, I don't think they went to Isfahan. So I think, yeah, I think they're just taken up by the heresy as a whole, and it's just like, I think he had like 20,000. Some were lost in ships. Some were shot down. There was only like, I think, 12 or 11,000 that made it to Planetfall, and they did a mighty job of defending the ground and whatnot. So it's sad to know that they're pretty much all wasted, but we know what happens. The heresy eventually moves on to Terror and whatnot, but I would like to know what happens to Marcus Valerius and whatnot. I haven't looked up on it. I mean, I know I could. It's probably easy. Someone could just tell me, leave it in the comments. But is he like the first main priest or something? Not the saint, because I know who the first saint is. But did he play a major role in the actual creating of the religion? Because I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up doing so, because it would make more sense than just random death out of the blue. So yeah, and that was it's really short. That's Valerius. It's okay. And we'll move on now. So the fourth book is the Ember Wolves. So we return to the Legio Audax, which is basically the Legio that was following World Bearers, Angron's Legion, the World Bearers. They're the unique Legio that carries the Ursa claws on the Warhounds, and I think some of the larger ones carry it. It's a really fun Titan story. It's nice to see a whole bunch of Titan stories in this audiobook, and if you're a Titan fan, this is the story for you. More so if you're a Heresy Titan fan, because they really agree, or Warhound Titan fan, because they're very aggressive and abstract, just like we know that Warhound Princeps are. But yeah, they're on the high world of Epsilon, fighting Legio Castigator, I think that's how it's pronounced, and whatnot. They come across, basically, the pack comes across the Titan Tantorus Magnificat, which I believe is an Imperator. Yeah, it has to be Imperator or larger. It was much larger than Warlord, which is because these Warhounds specialize in taking down bigger prey. That's what them and the Ursa claws are. I don't know any of the names, unfortunately. There's no information on Lexicon again. So, but I know mostly off by heart is basically the Princeps Sonorus, Sonorus sends all his packs to go take down Tantarus by any means possible. And they do, some of them claw it in, which is nice, but I think one unfortunate warlord shoots its Ursa's claw into its gun arm or its arm, and basically Tantarus just picks it up by the chain and starts flailing this Warhound around like a flail, smashing into other Titans, which I think it would be pretty funny to see on obviously a Titan scale size. But yeah, I also like to see Ursa Claw models for the Titanicus or even standard Heralds Heresy. It would be a nice thing. But yeah, they eventually do. They do take down Tantarus. They manage to topple it to the ground, with obviously all its bastions on its back and whatnot as it crashes down. And yeah, and then they sort of start fighting over its carcass. Or some of the another guy from the pack basically challenges the leadership, saying that you're not worthy to lead the Ember Wolves. So he tries to take over, and they're about to dish out before they come under a surprise attack from another Titan that was hiding a secret from the same Legio, the Legio Castigator. So they take that one on and fight to the end, and eventually the guy that we're following deals a death blow to the guy that challenged him, which is nice. And he's just you know, like prideful and sort of arrogant about the whole thing, only to then come across the fact that the last-ditch effort of the crew from Tantoris Magnifica had been overloading the plasma drives and set the thing to detonate. And an Imperator class Titan detonating is not a thing you want to be around, and obviously it does detonate, and we have no more of the story. Everything is just flashed away in a blinding light. He might have survived, might have not. It's yeah, we don't know. But it was a very nice Titanicus story. If you're a fan of Titans of fighting, it was a really good story. I enjoyed it, and I'll probably be happy to listen to that one a few times, just to get that fury, the Titan fury when we're playing Adeptus Titanicus. So yeah, good story, and I enjoyed that one. And we'll move on. Book 5, Black Shields. So Black Shields is just a short story about basically a renegade Death Shroud, one of Mortarian's bodyguard that's decided to leave Mortarian, and they've been pursued by another ship that's taking shots at them. They don't know who it is. They're on their last ropes. They escape by Stormbird as their ship's been destroyed onto a planet that pretty much resembles Barbarous, and then they basically conflicted out with the legionaries that come after them, finding out that they're the Black Shields, the band of legionaries that has no master, going around just sort of, you know, fighting the war where they can, survivors from this van and whatnot. But there's not real interesting note out of the story other than the fact that the leader of the Black Shields is also a turncoat Mortarian son, obviously because he's a loyalist, but we follow the main Death Shroud was a traitor, but he decided to turn against Mortarian and Moloch, so he's sort of you know, allied to no sides because he's a traitor to all. And yeah, it doesn't end up well because they, you know, the Black Shields think they can use him, but he accidentally, there's some witchery involved, and this guy doesn't, the Death Shroud doesn't like witchery, so they end up in a conflict again, and he ends up dying. And the Black Shield sort of lament that, you know, he was a useful soul, we could have used him, but yeah, it doesn't have any real weight or impact in my opinion. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying I don't really see much of a, maybe if the characters themselves are important. I think I can't see any direct names. Has begun. Ex-Death Shroud Terminator Sergeant Korok has begun the raid of the Imperium. Yep. And the Black led by another fallen son of Mortarian, the Black Shield Kryos Morthug. I think the only interesting thing to note about the story is that he's sort of interned in this sort of warped and imbued mechanical body that's sort of not accepted by the priesthood. Some mechanical priest did it to him to keep him alive, but yeah, it doesn't really give us much or tell us why, or maybe it did, I just didn't pay much attention. But yeah, so that's Black Shields, Book 5. The 6th audiobook is Children of Skitaris. Sorry if I can't pronounce that one. It follows the events of what happens to Corpharon and his little band of followers after the Fall of Kaf, taking a swing at Gilliman and missing, having one of his hearts ripped out and escaping into the warp. They appear on this planet. Basically, they appear on this planet trying to just, and they're being chased by some adept Lazara. Basically a follower of Zench, as they're running around. Eventually they get saved by a priest along the ways who knows all about them, because apparently Corpharon is part of the prophecy to save the children of Skitaris, which is like the name of the planet. And yeah, she shows Kor Phaeron the prophecy, and it basically has him killing himself to open up a warp gate through back to Lorgar, so that all his followers and the priest and his religion can escape. Obviously, if you know anything about Kor Phaeron, he's not happy about this. Basically, just kills the priest outright, ignores the prophecy, and walks off. And then obviously Lazar, they've been chased by, comes in, and she's like, "Oh, this is an interesting turn of events. Maybe I can offer you a deal. You can have this planet indeed for your service." And Kor Phaeron's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And as they go to strike the deal, he just kills her outright because, what do you expect? It's Kor Phaeron. Kor Phaeron. If you know anything about him from like any of the other books, you just understand how much of just a basic dickhead he is. So yeah, and then I think they take over this new planet for when Cultures falls, and then the story sort of ends there. But it gives a really good another look into just how much of an ass Kor Phaeron is, how much he's willing to push others for his religion but not himself. It's all good to go sacrifice 1,001 people who believe in your word, but you won't do the same for and it's just like, wow, hypocritical much. But yeah, yeah, and I just think it's really good, especially if you've read the Primarch book Lorgar. It just shows you just how much of, he's just willing to go so far at the cost of everything but his own sort of pride or livelihood. As long as he comes out on top by any means necessary, he won't ever sacrifice himself. He's willing to sacrifice everyone else but himself, maybe even Lorgar to a degree. Yeah, I enjoyed this one. I think it's definitely one of the good ones in this book. And yeah, that was the 6th book in Heralds of the Siege. The 7th book, EXOCYTOSIS, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, follows the accounts of First Captain Typhon. After their last battle, they are on a planet due to the thanks of Luthor from the Dark Angels, getting their ships fixed, just waiting around so they can bugger off and continue doing the heresy that needs to be done. And yeah, what's nice about it is sort of we get to see like Luthor comes back, and he's obviously full on sort of traitorous now. Well, no, I wouldn't say full on traitorous, but obviously harboring Typhon is not a loyalist thing to do. So it's interesting there. But more importantly, we get to see sort of Typhon's starting to realize that things aren't all the same. He's seen the sort of plague symbols on his body, and sort of the weirdness that's happening. And as they're just waiting around, Luthor's trying to get him to come over and have a drink and converse with him, so that they can have his ear and get good rapport with the War Master. But Typhon's just like, I just want to fix my ships and go. Then a bunch of basically civilians turn up. A bunch of civilians turn up, asking for Typhus. Nobody obviously knows who Typhus is. So Typhon goes out there and goes checks in, and they basically declare him as the new herald, the chosen one of the grandfather, which we all come to know, whatnot. And basically one of the scouts that Luthor said to keep an eye on things sees that these aren't just civilians. These are rotting corpses or whatnot. The plague horde, and it proceeds to engage them. Obviously, the Death Guard kill him and then flee in the night. Well, not flee in the night; they just leave in the night. The story sort of ends there. Obviously, there's a little bit more in depth to it, but it's sort of the grand. I noticed overarching all the stories. It's sort of the sort of real swap into the traitors we know them as today. Typhon becomes Typhus. The the Emperor's children become their flamboyant pink rather than their dark regal green. I mean purple that we know them as. Things like that. Things like this. And this is sort of that Typhon switch. How we know. Obviously we know that Typhus and 40k is obviously the master of the sort of plague horde. And this sort of shows the sort of first sort of beginning of that and how it all starts, which is a very nice sort of thing to see. So I'm very happy about that. It's sort of all coming together now. And that was book 6, I believe, and we'll move on. Book 8 in Heralds of the Siege is The Painted Count, and this follows the events of Grendor Sabavok from the Night Lords after the disastrous invasion of Sothar and the dimming of the Pharos' light. Basically what happens here is he's trying to obviously take control of the Night Lords, as they've sort of been given free reign, and there's no sort of principal person in charge after obviously the Night Haunters somewhere in space, so Grendor Slavovic's main rival is Captain Shang, I think, who was the Primarch's personal equerry, but they have sort of like the right way of doing things, even though it's the Night Lord. So rather than just outright kill each other, it's sort of like foul play behind the scenes. Probably the more important aspect of the story is a sword that he keeps carrying. I forgot how he came across by the sword, but it's obviously a demonic sword, because every time he keeps throwing it away, it just keeps appearing right next to him or something like that. And they're about to have a vote to determine the new leader of the Night Lords and what the next plan of attack would be, whether or not it would go to join Horus in the invasion of Terra, or just go around pillaging, or just go look for the Primarch or something. But before they can obviously make their cases and have the big vote, Captain Slang locks Grendor away into the giant labyrinth that the Night Haunter had built for Vulcan right after the Isfan massacre. So he's locked in the vault that was obviously meant for a Primarch, and has no way of getting out. He tries a few times and doesn't really get away. But fortunately, the sword appears, and the demonic entity inside guides him the way out, and eventually finds the way to break through. And so he's able to basically arrive just in time to everyone's surprise, which is kind of funny, and take out Captain Schlang fair by fair means, and claim the right of I don't know, Lord of the Legion for now. And I think he forces them all to go to Terra. It's a nice story. it doesn't have too much weight, I guess. Well, I mean, it does have the weight that shows you why the Night Lords end up on Terra, but if you're not a Nightfall's fan, it doesn't really do much. And even if you are a Night Lords fan, it doesn't really do much, because I don't really have any sort of opinion on Night Lords. I only really care about Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter himself, because I think he's just a scary Batman, which I really like. But I did enjoy to see that they're still doing their things, and they have a little bit of a hierarchy and their own sort of system of honor, which I guess is just unique to the Night Lords, because they're a bunch of scoundrels. So yeah, that was book 8, and we'll move on. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the first 8 books in Heralds of the Siege, and stay tuned where I go over the last 8 books. And as always guys, much love and thanks for the support. See ya.